The Last Candle. Japanese Ghost Stories for Sleep. Episode 2. 10 Stories, Told Slowly, by Candlelight. Tonight's 10 stories. The Peony Lantern. The Corpse Rider. In a Cup of Tea. Oshidori, the Mandarin Ducks. The Dream of Akinosuke. Yurei-Daki, the Waterfall of Ghosts. Riki-Baka. Zashiki-Warashi, the Child of the House. Mayoiga, the Hidden House, and the Kappa of Tono. Good evening. And welcome back to The Last Candle. The room is ready. The rain has settled in for the night. And 89 candles are burning, for on our first night together, 10 small flames were given to 10 stories, and went out, one by one. If this is your first night here, know only this. In old Japan, people gathered to tell 100 ghost stories, snuffing one candle after each, and they say that when the 100th tale ended, and the last light died, something came to listen. So we never tell the 100th story. The last candle always burns, and you may sleep safely in its glow. Tonight, 10 more tales. Some are famous, the Peony Lantern, whose soft light once followed a young man home. And some, gathered from the far northern valleys of Tono, have rarely been told outside Japan at all. You need not stay awake. The candles will keep count for you. Let us begin. Story 1. The Peony Lantern. Our first story tonight is perhaps the most famous love story among all the ghost stories of Japan, the tale of the Peony Lantern. It comes from old Edo, in the days of the samurai. There was once a young samurai named Shinzaburo, who lived alone by the bank of a quiet river. He was handsome and gentle, and unmarried, and one spring evening, at a plum blossom viewing, he met a young lady named Otsuyu, the daughter of a high official. They spoke only a little while, as courtesy allowed. But between them, in that little while, passed something that does not often pass between two people, and when they parted, Otsuyu whispered to him, "Remember me. And come again." But the ways of great houses are not simple. Shinzaburo could find no proper means to visit her, and the seasons turned, and the plum blossoms fell, and no message came. And in that silence, word reached him at last, that Otsuyu had fallen ill of longing, and had died. And her faithful maidservant, O-Yon, had died soon after, of grief. Shinzaburo mourned them truly. He set their names in his household shrine, and made the offerings, and the summer came, and the great festival of the dead. O Bon, when lanterns are lit to guide the returning spirits home. And on the first night of the festival, as he sat alone, he heard footsteps on the river path. The soft wooden click of women's sandals, approaching. He looked over his fence. And there in the darkness came 2 women, a maidservant carrying a beautiful lantern painted with peony flowers, and behind her, in a silken kimono, Otsuyu. "You," said Shinzaburo, and could say nothing more. "We heard that you had died," said the maid O-Yon, calmly. "And we were told the same of you, that you had died." so neither mourn the living. What a strange world it is. And Otsuyu lifted her eyes to him, and all his sense went out of him like a candle in the wind. That night, and the next, the two women came with their peony lantern, always after dark, always leaving before dawn. And Shinzaburo, who asked few questions of his own happiness, grew pale, and thin, and strange, as those do who spend their nights with the dead. It was his neighbor, an old servant, who saw it first. Peeping one night through the window, meaning only to check on his master, he saw Shinzaburo sitting in the lamplight, smiling, speaking tenderly, to a skeleton. A skeleton whose long hair was dressed like a lady's, whose bone-white hands rested upon his own. In terror the old man ran to the temple, and told the priest everything. "The dead have found him," said the priest. "If they visit him again, he will not live out the month." And the priest gave Shinzaburo holy texts to paste over every door and window, and told him the truth of what came to him at night, wearing the face of his beloved. Shinzaburo wept, but he obeyed. The house was sealed with sacred words. And that night, from within, he heard the sandals come up the river path, and stop. And a voice, sweet and sorrowful, calling around and around the house, searching for a way in. "He is here, but we cannot reach him. Oh, cruel, how cruel!" And toward dawn, weeping, the voices went away. Night after night the dead women circled the sealed house. And Shinzaburo might have outlasted them, but in that house there also lived a servant, a poor man with debts. And the dead, they say, can find what money can buy. One night, a single holy text was peeled quietly from a back window, by living hands, for dead gold. In the morning, the priest came, and found the house silent. Shinzaburo lay as if asleep, his face at peace, and it must be said, there are worse ways to be found. Beside him on the pillow lay a woman's long black hair, and at the garden gate, burned out and cold, a lantern, painted with peonies. The priest prayed for them all, long and honestly, for the young man, and for the two women, who had wanted only not to be parted. And after the prayers were said, the dead walked no more, and the story passed into the summer festivals, where it is still told when the lanterns are lit. So if ever, some warm July night, you see a soft lantern light moving slowly along a river path, let it pass, and wish it well. It is only someone, going faithfully, to meet the one they love. And that, at least, is something even the living can understand. The story of the peony lantern is told. One more candle goes out. 88 remain, and the next tale begins. Story 2. The Corpse Rider. Our second story is short, and strange, and very old, older than most of the tales of Japan. It is called The Corpse Rider. There was once a man who divorced his wife, coldly, and without kindness, for no better reason than that he had tired of her. In those days a woman so cast off had little left to her. And the wife, who had loved him, fell ill with the sorrow of it, and on her deathbed, she spoke one sentence to those around her. "When I am dead, I shall not rest, until I have torn him apart." She died with the words still warm on her lips. And when a person dies in such anger, the old people knew, the body itself does not behave as other bodies do. Her family, frightened, sent for a diviner, a master of the old arts, who understood the ways of the angry dead. The diviner came, and looked at the dead woman's face, and told the household plainly, "This is beyond prayers and incense. Her anger will rise tonight. And there is only one remedy, and it must be performed by the very man she hates. Bring the husband here." The husband came, unwilling, grey-faced, for even he had heard what her last words had been. And the diviner said to him, "Tonight, you will ride her body, as one rides a horse." The man recoiled. But the diviner's voice was iron. "You cast her off, and her anger is for you. If you are not upon her back when she rises, she will find you wherever you hide, and there will not be enough of you left to bury. Choose." And so, when night fell, the husband entered the room where the dead woman lay, and knelt upon her back, and took hold of her long black hair with both hands, as a rider takes the reins. "Do not let go," said the diviner, "whatever happens, until dawn." And he closed the door, and left the man alone with her, in the dark. For a long time, nothing moved. The house creaked. The night deepened. The man's knees ached against the cold of her, and then, in the deepest hour, the body beneath him breathed. She rose. Not slowly, not stiffly, but with a terrible strength, like a wave standing up out of the sea. And she cried out, "He is heavy. He is so heavy, but I will do it." And she began to run. Out of the room, out of the house, into the night she ran, with the man clinging to her back, his hands wound deep in her hair, his eyes shut tight. All night she ran, through fields and over ditches, crying out in her fury, searching, searching for the man she meant to tear apart, and never once understanding, that he was the weight upon her own shoulders. When the first gray of dawn touched the sky, she faltered, and turned, and walked quietly back to the house, and lay down in her place, as if nothing at all had happened. And the man stayed upon her back, his hands in her hair, not daring to move, until the sun was well risen, and the diviner came and pried his fingers loose, one by one. The dead woman never rose again. Her anger had spent itself in the night's long running, and what remained of her was only tired, and quiet, and ready at last for the grave. The husband lived, though it is said his hair had turned white, every strand of it, and that he was afterward exceedingly kind to women. It is a grim little tale, told with a wink in the old books. But there is a kindness hidden in it, if you look, for even the fiercest anger, the story says, grows tired by morning. Whatever runs through the dark tonight, by dawn, it will lie down and rest. And so may you. The story of the corpse rider is told. One more candle goes out. 87 remain, and the next tale begins. Story 3. In a Cup of Tea. Our third story is a curious one, a story that, famously, has no ending. The old storyteller who first wrote it down left it unfinished, perhaps on purpose. It is called, In a Cup of Tea. On the first day of the new year, long ago, a young attendant named Sekanai was traveling in the retinue of his lord. At a rest house on the road, the party stopped for refreshment, and Sekanai, being thirsty, poured himself a large cup of tea. He lifted the cup, and stopped. In the tea, looking up at him, was a face. Not his own reflection. The face of a young samurai he had never seen, delicate and pale, with strange, knowing eyes, and it was smiling at him. Sekanai poured the tea away, and rinsed the cup, and filled it again. The face returned, smiling. He emptied it once more, and filled it once more, and there was the face, unmoved, amused, waiting. So Sekanai, who was young, and proud, and did not like to be mocked, raised the cup, and drank it down, face and all. That evening, as he kept watch in his lord's residence, a stranger entered the room, though no servant had announced him, and no door had been heard to open. A young samurai, delicate and pale, with strange, knowing eyes. And Sekanai knew the face at once, for he had swallowed it that very morning. "I am Shikibu Heinai," said the stranger, smiling. "This morning, you did me an injury. And now you know it." Sekanai drew his sword and struck, but the blade passed through the visitor like a stick through smoke, and the stranger stepped lightly to the wall, and into it, and was gone. The next night, 3 new visitors came, grim men who bowed with cold courtesy and announced themselves as retainers of Shikibu Heinai. "Our master," they said, "will return on the 16th day of the month, to repay the wound you gave him. We come only to tell you so." Sekanai, angry and afraid at once, struck at them too, and they flitted like moths along the walls, never quite touched, never quite gone, whispering the 16th day, the 16th day, until at last they melted into the shadows and left him alone, with his sword in his hand, in the empty room. And there, the old book stops. The storyteller wrote, in his own hand, the tale is unfinished. What became of Sekanai on the 16th day, no one recorded. Whether the swallowed face collected its debt, or forgave it, whether a man can be haunted from within, having drunk his ghost like tea, the story does not say. Perhaps the storyteller was called away. Perhaps he thought an unfinished ghost story would trouble his readers longer than a finished one, and if that was his plan, it worked, for people have wondered about the 16th day for 200 years. Lafcadio Hearn, who found the tale in an old book and loved it, offered his readers a mischievous suggestion, that they finish it themselves. But he warned them, gently, of one thing: think carefully, he said, about what it may mean, to swallow a soul. We will not finish it either. Some doors are better left ajar. But it is worth remembering, next time a face smiles up at you from your tea, that you may always, politely, pour it out. There is no shame in it. And the tea can be made again. Sleep on it, if you like. The 16th day is a long way off, and whatever waits in the bottom of the cup, it cannot reach you here, in the warm dark, with the rain on the roof, and the candles keeping count. The story of In a Cup of Tea is told. One more candle goes out. 86 remain, and the next tale begins. Story 4. Oshidori, the Mandarin Ducks. Our fourth story is small, and sad, and gentle, the story of the Oshidori, the Mandarin Ducks, who in Japan are the very symbol of faithful love. For Mandarin ducks, the old people say, mate for life. There was once a falconer and hunter named Sunjo, who lived in the district of Tamuranogo, in the province of Mutsu. One day he went out hunting, and found no game at all, nothing, all the long day. But on his way home, at a place called Akinuma, he saw a pair of Oshidori, two Mandarin ducks, swimming together in a river that he was about to cross. To kill Oshidori was not well thought of, there was an old unease about it, for who would part such faithful creatures? But Sunjo was hungry, and his day had been empty. He drew his bow, and his arrow found the male bird, the drake, with his painted feathers. The female fled into the rushes on the far shore. Sunjo carried the dead bird home, and cooked it, and ate it, and thought no more about it. Hunters cannot afford to think too long about such things. But that night, Sunjo dreamed. A woman came into his room, beautiful, and pale, and drenched with sorrow, and she stood beside his pillow, and began to weep. She wept so bitterly that Sunjo felt, in his sleep, as if his own heart were being torn out of him. "Why," she cried, "oh, why did you kill him? Of what wrong was he guilty? At Akinuma we were so happy together, and you killed him. What harm did he ever do you? Do you even know what you have done? Oh, do you know what a cruel, what a wicked thing you have done?" And then she wept again, so bitterly that the sound of it went into the marrow of the hunter's bones. And through her weeping, she spoke a poem, in the old measured way of Japanese verse. At the coming of twilight, I invited him to return with me. Now, to sleep alone in the shadow of the rushes of Akinuma, ah, what misery unspeakable. And having spoken those lines, she looked at him and said, "You do not know, you cannot know what you have done. But tomorrow, when you go to Akinuma, you will see. You will see." And weeping still, she went away. Sunjo woke in the grey of morning with the dream heavy upon him. And the words would not leave him. "Tomorrow, when you go to Akinuma, you will see." So he rose, and took no bow with him, and walked out to the river to learn what the dream had meant. And there at Akinuma, on the open water, he saw the female Oshidori, swimming alone. In the same moment, the bird saw him. But she did not flee. She swam straight toward him, strangely, steadily, her eyes fixed upon his all the while, and then, before him, at the river's edge. She tore open her own body with her beak, and died there, in front of his eyes. Sunjo stood a long time at the water. What he thought, no one recorded, but what he did is remembered. He broke his bow. He gave up his trade, and shaved his head, and became a priest, and spent the rest of his days praying, it is said, beside that same quiet water at Akinuma. It is the shortest kind of story, and the oldest kind, about a sorrow that changes a life. The Japanese have loved it for centuries, not because it frightens, it does not frighten, but because it reminds that every small life is a whole life. That love is not only ours. And the Mandarin ducks still pair for life, on quiet rivers all over Japan, swimming close together at twilight, in the shadow of the rushes. May all faithful things stay together this night, and may you rest as peacefully as still water. The story of Oshidori, the Mandarin ducks is told. One more candle goes out. 85 remain, and the next tale begins. Story 5. The Dream of Akinosuke. Our fifth story is not a frightening one at all, it is a dream, and one of the loveliest in old Japan. It is the story of Akinosuke, who lived a whole life in an afternoon. In the province of Yamato there lived a well-to-do farmer named Miyata Akinosuke. One warm afternoon, he sat drinking wine in his garden with two friends, under a great old cedar tree, and a strange drowsiness came over him, so heavy that he begged his friend's pardon, lay down at the foot of the tree, and fell asleep. He dreamed that across the fields came a grand procession, lacquered palanquins, silk banners, servants in fine robes, the retinue, surely, of some great lord. And the procession halted before him, and a messenger knelt, and said, "We are sent by the king of Tokoyo, who desires your presence. A carriage waits." Akinosuke, astonished, was carried away over lands he did not know, to a palace whose roofs shone like water, and there the king himself received him kindly, and said, "It is our wish that you become our son-in-law. This very day, you shall marry our daughter." And so it was done, that same day, with music and lanterns, and the princess was young and lovely as the morning, and Akinosuke, the farmer from Yamato, found that he loved her, and was loved, and that his old life seemed dim and far away, like something seen through mist. The king appointed him governor of an island called Raishu, green, and fertile, and gentle of climate. And Akinosuke governed it well, for 24 years, wisely, and without harshness, so that the people loved him. His princess bore him 7 children, 5 boys and 2 girls, and the years were kind, and full, and went by like slow water. But in the 24th year, sorrow came, for his wife, the princess, fell ill and died. They buried her on a beautiful hill on the island, under a stone worthy of her, and Akinosuke's grief was so deep that he no longer cared to live. And when the mourning time was over, a royal messenger came to the island and said, "Gently, the king commands that you now return to your own people. The 7 children are of royal blood, they will be cared for tenderly. Do not trouble your heart for them." So Akinosuke, obedient and empty, went down to the shore, and as the ship carried him over the water, the island grew small, and the world grew strange, and grey, and he woke, under the cedar tree, in his own garden, in the light of the same afternoon. His 2 friends were still sitting beside him, chatting over their wine. "You slept only a few minutes," they told him, laughing. "But we saw a curious thing while you slept. A little yellow butterfly fluttered over your face, and settled on the ground beside you. And then a big ant came out of a hole under this tree, and seized it, and dragged it down into the earth. And just before you woke, the butterfly came up out of the hole again, and fluttered over your face as before, and vanished. Akinosuke told them his dream, the palace, the princess, the island, the 24 years. And his friends looked at one another, and dug a little at the roots of the cedar tree. And there, beneath it, they found a vast nest of ants, galleries and towers of earth, a whole kingdom in miniature. And in one small chamber, on a little hill, a tiny mound, over the body of a female ant. There was his palace, there was his island of Raishu, and there, on the beautiful hill, was the grave of his princess. Akinosuke filled the hole in gently, they say, and let the little kingdom be. What he felt, the story does not tell, but it is not, somehow, a sad ending. He had been loved for 24 years, in a single afternoon, under a tree in his own garden. Few of us are given so much, so kindly, so close to home. The old Buddhist storytellers meant it as a lesson about the dreamlike smallness of all our busy lives, but you need not take the lesson tonight. Take only the softness of it. A warm afternoon. A garden. A little wine. And a whole gentle lifetime, waiting inside a nap. May your own sleep tonight be half so generous. The story of the dream of Akinosuke is told. One more candle goes out. 84 remain, and the next tale begins. Story 6. Yurei-Daki, the Waterfall of Ghosts. Our sixth story takes place on a winter night, in a mountain village of Ekizan, near a waterfall with an unfriendly name. The people called it Yurei-Daki, the Waterfall of Ghosts. In that village, the women worked together in the evenings at the hemp house, cleaning hemp for the weavers. And one cold night, as the snow whispered outside, they warmed themselves with talk of ghosts, as workers on winter nights have always done. The talk turned, naturally, to the waterfall, to Yurei-Daki, up in the dark of the gorge, and to the small shrine that stood beside it, with its offering box. And someone said, laughing, "Who among us would dare to go there, now, tonight, alone, and bring back the offering box as proof?" The laughter went around the circle, and stopped at a young mother named Okatsu, who was bold, and merry, and perhaps a little proud. The others promised her all the hemp they had cleaned that evening, a fine prize, if she would do it. And Okatsu, with her baby sleeping warm on her back, as country mothers carried them, stood up, and tied her sandals, and went out into the snow. The road was black, and the snow came thin and stinging. The village lights fell away behind her. She followed the frozen path up the gorge, hearing the water before she saw it, the deep winter voice of the fall, hammering into its pool, and there at last was the little shrine, crusted with ice, and the offering box before it. She took the box. It was heavier than she had thought, but it was hers. And as she turned to go, out of the roar of the waterfall, a voice called her name. "Oi! Okatsu-san!" It came from inside the falling water, clear, and distinct, and not like any voice she knew. The dark of the gorge seemed suddenly to lean toward her. And Okatsu, to her credit, or her folly, did not drop the box. She ran. "Oi! Okatsu-san!" The voice called again, behind her, out of the water, neither angry nor kind, only calling, the way one calls after someone who has forgotten something. She ran all the way down the frozen path, through the whispering snow, never once looking behind her, for she remembered the old warning, that one must never look back when the dark calls your name, and she did not stop until the lights of the hemp house rose before her, and she burst in among the women, breathless, triumphant, with the offering box in her arms. They crowded around her, half in awe. She had done it, she had really gone. And they praised her, and paid her price of hemp gladly, and someone laughed that not even the ghosts of the waterfall could frighten Okatsu. And Okatsu, warm at last, laughed too, and reached over her shoulder to lift her baby around, to nurse him. And here, friends, we must stop a moment, as the old storyteller stops, for this is a tale from a harder time than ours, and it does not end as we would wish. When Okatsu drew the little one around to her breast, she found that what she carried was cold. The voice at the waterfall had called her name twice. She had not answered, and she had not looked back. And the mountain had taken its toll all the same. That is why the fall is called Yurei-Daki to this day, and why, in that village, no one boasted afterward about errands in the dark, and why old women, hearing the story, would only say quietly, "Nothing in this world is worth more than what you already carry." It is a sorrowful tale, and we tell it softly, the way it deserves. But you may sleep in peace after it, all the same, for its warning is long since taken, and its waterfall is far away, and no voice will call your name out of the dark tonight. Hold close what you love, and rest. The story of Yurei-Daki, the waterfall of ghosts, is told. One more candle goes out. 83 remain, and the next tale begins. Story 7. Riki-Baka. Our seventh story is the gentlest in all of Hearn's books, hardly a ghost story at all, and yet entirely one. It is about a boy called Riki-Baka. Riki the Simple. Riki was a boy of the neighborhood, big, and strong, and kind, with the mind of a small child that never grew older, though his body grew tall. Because his name, Riki, is written with the character for strength, the children called him Riki-Baka, strong fool, and he did not mind, for he liked children, and they liked him. He was happiest with the little ones. He flew kites with them, and played at war with grass stalks, and lost gladly, and laughed his great laugh, and mothers watching from their doorways trusted him completely, for in all his years Riki had never once been rough, or unkind. He died young, as the gentle-minded often did in those days, quietly, of a fever, when he was about 16. And his mother, weeping, did what mothers in old Japan sometimes did. She wrote his name upon the palm of his left hand. Riki, in fine brush strokes, so that, if he should be born again, he might be known. And she prayed, "Let him be born into a happier condition this time, into a great house, where he will be loved." And the neighbors, who had loved the boy, prayed the same. And time, as it does, moved on. Years later, in a fine samurai residence on the other side of the city, a son was born. A healthy, beautiful boy. But on the palm of his small left hand, there were markings, characters, faint but unmistakable, that no one had written there. And the characters said, Riki. The family understood at once what it meant, for such things were known and believed. A soul had come to them, someone's prayer had been answered, and they made inquiries, quietly, through the quarters of the city, whose child, in years past, had died with that name written on his hand. The inquiries found Riki's old street, and his mother, now gray, and she wept, this time not with sorrow, when she heard where her boy had gone. Into a great house. Loved. Just as she had prayed. But there was one small trouble, and here the story smiles. The birthmark, the written name, would not fade. And the wise woman of the samurai household declared that it would never fade, until the name was, in the proper old way, given back. So a servant of the great house was sent to Riki's old neighborhood, to take a little of the clay from the boy's grave, and a little water from the well he had drunk from, and to rub the writing, gently, from the newborn's palm. And it was done just so. And the name came away like mist from a mirror, and the child's hand was clear. And that is the whole of it. No vengeance, no midnight visitation, only a name, written in love, delivered like a letter across the border of death, and answered. Hearn, who heard the tale from his own neighborhood in Tokyo, wrote it down without changing anything, because, he said, it needed nothing changed. And perhaps that is true of the people we love as well. Somewhere, the old believers would tell you, every kindness is carried forward, written on the palm of some small new hand. It is as good a thought as any to fall asleep on. Rest now, and be known, and loved, wherever the night carries you. The story of Riki-Baka is told. One more candle goes out. 82 remain, and the next tale begins. Story 8. Zashiki-Warashi, the child of the house. With our 8th story, we travel somewhere new, to the deep northern valleys of Tono, in Iwate. In 1910, a scholar named Kunio Yanagita wrote down the tales the farmers of Tono told him, exactly as they told them, and those tales are still whispered in Japan today, though the world outside has rarely heard them. Tonight, you will. The people of Tono say that in some old farmhouses there lives a spirit called the Zashiki-Warashi, the parlor child. It looks like a child of 5 or 6, sometimes a little girl with bobbed hair, sometimes a boy, and it lives in the Zashiki, the best room of the house, where guests are received. It does no harm. Quite the opposite, for the Zashiki-Warashi is the luck of the house. While the child's spirit stays, the family prospers, the harvests come in, the silkworms thrive, the money stays in the storehouse. The old families of Tono knew exactly which houses had one, and those houses were watched with respect, and a little envy. Mostly, the child is heard rather than seen. On quiet evenings, small footsteps in the empty parlor, running lightly across the tatami. The faint sound of a spinning wheel turning in a room where no one sits. Paper rustling. A child's low laugh from behind a screen, and when the screen is opened, nothing. The family would only nod to one another, the child is playing. Yanagita recorded the houses by name. In the house of a rich man of Tsuchibuchi village, a mother sewing alone heard the rustle of paper in the next room, and the sound of a child breathing, and knew, without fear, who it was. The children of such houses sometimes met the spirit in the halls at dusk, a small stranger who looked at them, and was gone, and they were not afraid either. One does not fear the luck of one's own house. But the tales of Tono are farmers' tales, and farmers know that luck does not always stay. And so the most famous story of the Zashiki-Warashi is the story of its leaving. There was a great old family in the village of Yamaguchi, rich for generations, as far back as anyone could count. And one day, a man of the village, crossing the bridge on the road from Tono, met two little girls he did not know, walking away from that house, hand in hand, with grave small faces. "Where do you come from, children?" he asked. And they answered, "From the house of Magaziman, in Yamaguchi." "And where are you going?" The little girls looked up at him, and named a different family, in another village, far away. And they walked on. And the man stood on the bridge and watched them go, and a cold came over him, for he understood, as all Tono would have understood, whose luck it was, walking away down the road on two pairs of small feet. Within the year, the story says, the house of Magaziman was ruined. 20 people of that household died of an illness in a single season, the fortune scattered, the great old family was gone, as if the earth had closed over it. And the family the little girls had named, prospered, and prospers, they say, to this day. That is how they tell it in Tono, flatly, without decoration, the way one reports the weather. Yanagita wrote that the people did not consider these stories entertainment. They considered them facts, facts about luck, and houses, and how quietly the important things come and go. There are inns and I wait, even now, where guests ask for the room with the Zashiki-Warashi, and lie awake hoping to hear small footsteps, for it is said that anyone who sees the child of the house will have great fortune. Businessmen and travelers book that room years in advance. The child, presumably, finds this very funny. It is a good spirit to fall asleep thinking of, the small guardian in the best room, playing quietly while the household sleeps, keeping the luck warm like a coal under ash. May your own house have such a lodger, and may its footsteps, if you ever hear them, be staying, not leaving. The story of Zashiki-Warashi, the child of the house, is told. One more candle goes out. 81 remain, and the next tale begins. Story 9. Mayoiga, the Hidden House. Our ninth story also comes from the valleys of Tono, and it is one of the strangest gifts in all Japanese folklore. It is the tale of the Mayoiga, the lost house, the house that finds you. Deep in the mountains of Tono, the people say, there stands a house that is on no path and in no village. Those who wander far enough, lost enough, may suddenly come upon it, a fine black gate, a garden of red and white flowers, a great farmhouse better than any in the valleys, standing silent in the wild mountains where no house should be. And this is the law of the Mayoiga, which every child of Tono once knew: the house shows itself only to those it chooses. And whoever enters, is meant to take something. Anything. A cup, a bowl, a single flower. For a thing carried out of the hidden house brings fortune to its taker, forever. The house wishes to give. To take nothing, is to refuse a gift the mountains offer only once. Now, the story. There was a young wife of Oguni village, married into a poor house, and one day she went into the mountains to gather butterbur. The good plants led her on, deeper than she meant to go, until she looked up and did not know where she was. And then, in the fold of a green valley, she saw a black gate. She went in, calling politely, as one does, and no one answered. The garden bloomed red and white. In the great house, the fire pit glowed with warm coals, and an iron kettle steamed above it, rice ready in the pot, lacquered bowls set out as if for guests expected at any moment. In the inner room, she heard, almost, the quiet of someone who has just stopped moving. But no one came, and no one answered, and the young wife grew frightened at all that silent readiness, and hurried out through the black gate and down the mountain, taking nothing, telling herself she had trespassed enough. In the village they mostly laughed at her tale, a fine house in those mountains, indeed. But her father-in-law, who was old, did not laugh. He said, "That was the Mayoiga. And it showed itself to you. You should have taken something, child, it wanted you to." Some days later, the young wife was washing at the stream behind the house, when down the water, turning slowly in the current, came a red lacquered bowl. A beautiful thing, finer than anything her family owned. She lifted it out, and hesitated, for taking a stray bowl from the stream felt close to stealing. But it was too lovely to let float away. So she kept it, and, half ashamed, she hid it in the rice measure, and used it secretly to measure the family's rice. And from that day, the rice in that poor house never ran out. Measure after measure, the bin stayed full. The family wondered, then prospered, then grew, quietly, into one of the fortunate houses of the village. And at last the young wife confessed where the red bowl had come from, and the old man nodded, and said what the people of Tono still say. The Mayoiga does not forget. She would not take her gift from the house, so the house sent her gift downstream. Ever after, they say, men of that district would sometimes go into the mountains on purpose to be a little lost, hoping for a black gate in a green valley. Some claimed to find it, and came back empty-handed and rich in nothing but the story, for the house does not open to the greedy. It opens to the ones who were not looking. Yanagita wrote the tale down in 1910, from the lips of a Tono storyteller, and it has hardly been told in English from that day to this. So you may count yourself, tonight, among the first strangers ever invited through the Black Gate. And if the mountains ever offer you a gift, a small good thing, floating easily within reach, the people of Tono would advise you, gently, take it, and be grateful. Fortune is shy. It does not always knock twice. But tonight, Nothing is required of you at all, only to lie back, and let the current bring what it brings. Sleep well. The story of Mayoiga, the hidden house, is told. One more candle goes out. 80 remain, and the next tale begins. Story 10. The Kappa of Tono. Our 10th and final story tonight stays in Tono, down by the rivers, where the Kappa live. If you have never met a Kappa, let the farmers of Tono introduce you, for they knew them, the way one knows troublesome neighbors. A Kappa is a river child, the size of a small boy, the color of the deep pool it lives in, with webbed hands, a beak like a turtle's, and on the crown of its head a little dish that must always hold water. While the dish is full, the Kappa is strong as 3 men. If the dish spills, it is weak as a kitten. Remember that. The farmers always did. In most of Japan, they will tell you Kappa are green. But the Kappa of Tono, and the old men were quite firm on this point, are red. Red-faced, like boiled crabs. Tono has always done things its own way. The rivers of Tono are full of Kappa stories, and most begin the same way: a horse, brought down to the water to drink, and something small and quick rising out of the pool to steal it. Kappa cannot resist horses. No one knows why. It is simply their nature, as stealing cucumbers is, and challenging travelers to wrestle. So, the most famous tale. One day, by the Kagurace River, a Kappa rose from the water and seized a farmer's horse by the halter, meaning to drag it down into the pool. But the horse, being a sensible Tono horse, was having none of it. It shied, and bolted, and galloped all the way home to its stable, with the Kappa still tangled in the halter, bouncing along behind. In the yard, the Kappa, dizzy and desperate, did the only thing it could think of: it flipped the horse's feed bucket over itself and hid underneath, like a child under a washtub. And there the family found it, a small red creature, trembling under the bucket, its head dish nearly dry, the terror of the river, caught by a horse. The whole household gathered to decide what to do with it. Some said kill it. Kappa dragged children into the pools, after all. But the grandfather said no. Make it swear, he said. A Kappa keeps its promises. That, too, is its nature. It cannot help it, any more than the cucumbers. So they made the Kappa swear a solemn oath, that it would never again trouble the horses, or the children, of that village. And the Kappa, weeping river water, swore. And they filled its head dish from the well, kindly enough, and carried it back to the river, and let it go. And it kept its word. That stretch of river never lost a child or a horse again, though the neighbors downstream, the old men noted drilly, were not included in the oath, and would have to catch their own Kappa. The people of Tono lived with their Kappa the way one lives with weather, warily, respectfully, with a certain affection. Mothers warned children away from the deep pools. Travelers left the Kappa's cucumbers alone. And when a Kappa was caught doing mischief, it was made to apologize in writing, and there are villages in Japan that still keep, or claim to keep, those old apologies, sealed with a small wet handprint. In Tono today there is a little stream behind an old temple, called the Kappabuchi, the Kappa pool, where visitors fish for kappa with a cucumber on a line, under a sign that promises a reward for a live one. No one has claimed the reward yet. The Kappa of Tono did not survive 1,000 years by being stupid. And that is our last tale of the night, a small red neighbor under the water, bound by its own promise, keeping the peace of the river. Not everything strange in the dark means you harm. Some of it made its apologies long ago, and keeps its word still, under the cold clean water of the north. The rain is easing. The candles are low. Let the river run on without you now, and sleep. The story of the Kappa of Tono is told. The last of tonight's candles goes out. 79 remain, waiting for another night. And so 10 more candles have gone out, and 79 remain, glowing softly in the dark. The lantern has floated away down the river. The Kappa have slipped back beneath the water. Even the child spirit of the old house has curled up in its corner, and gone to sleep. We never tell the 100th story. The last candle is still burning, and it will keep burning, all through the night, for you. The last candle returns every week, with old stories from Japan, some of which the world outside has never heard. But that is for another night. For now, sleep well.